morning and welcome to Board Gaming Breakfast. We are starting a minute early today, so we will dilly-dally for a few seconds to allow people to filter into chat. Hope everyone's Friday is off to a great start. I know I'm looking forward to the weekend. But welcome to Board Gaming Breakfast. For those of you who are new, Board Gaming Breakfast is a live stream that I like to do every weekday morning. Where we jump in, we talk about a game that's been on my mind, then we move into adding a random game mechanic into that game, decided by our Wheel of Fate, and then we'll finish off the live stream with designing a game in 5 minutes. And so, let's get it on the road. So today's game, the game of the breakfast, is Fantasy Realms. So we are talking about the Deluxe Edition today. So we got this recently. We had the old Fantasy Realms, and so the difference between the Deluxe and the original is the art has been refreshed, revamped, and personally I really enjoy the style. And then it comes with 2 mini expansions in it. So Fantasy Realms, I don't know if there's an easy way to, maybe we'll push this in. Stick it up there. Fantasy Realms is our game of the day. Fantasy Realms, Fantasy Realms, Fantasy Realms. And so in Fantasy Realms, it's a hand management game. So you have a deck of, I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 suits in the base game. The expansion, one of the expansions adds 3 new suits to it, but it is a hand management game. So in the basic game, you'll be dealt 7 cards, and each of these cards has a suit assigned to it. Let's see if we can give us a little more light without it looking like interrogation, and out without getting glare. All right, we're got a lot of blue light, natural light coming in today. But so Fantasy Realms is a hand management game, and at the start of the game, you're going to be dealt 7 cards, and the simple turn mechanics are: on your turn, you will pick a card, play a card. You can either pick from the top of the deck or one that's been played out by another player. The player who goes first will have to draw from the top of the deck because there's no other cards available at the time. And you'll go through the process of pick a card, play a card until the discard has, in the base game, 10 cards in it, or if you're playing with one of the expansions, 12 cards in it. And so the discard isn't like a normal stack pile, they'll all be spread out, so when you're picking from a card on the table, you can pick any of them and not just the top card of the deck. So that is the simple rule structure of Fantasy Realms. Pretty simple to jump right into. But the goal of the game is once the round ends, you'll be adding up your hand score for the most points. And so the twist is that you're not only scoring base value points of the cards, but each card has an alternate scoring addition that you can try to achieve. So we got the flame here, so on its own it's only worth 9, but its bonus is for each weapon and artifact card that you have in your hand, you'll get an additional 9 points. And so if we ended the game with, say, the flame, and let's look for more weapons and artifacts. So if we had the flame and artifacts, is it artifacts? Yeah. So if we ended up with the flame, or the candle, and the, no, not the candle. We need weapons, so those are gray. Pausing. So we got weapons. So if we ended the game with the Shield of Keth and Elven Longbow in our hand, each of these would be an additional 9 points. So for this one card, you get 27 points for that. And so each card has a scoring criteria to it, and so you're trying to balance which cards you want to end up with to maximize your hand value. And so that on its own is really cool. And the ability to have the end game triggered by the number of cards in the discard gives some agency to the players that there's no fixed, okay, I only get to draw 7 cards in a round. It gives you the agency of controlling when the end is triggered. because if you don't want the game to end right away, you can swap out cards within the discard. And so if I picked a card from the discard and then discard it back into it, say there were 4 cards in the discard, I would end my turn with still 4 cards in the discard. And so I think that's not a unique mechanic because there's other games that use that principle, but I think giving the agency of the hand management adds this tension to the game where it's like, oh, I really need that last beast card to get me a 60-point bonus, but I don't like anything in the discard, and that so it's that tension of not knowing if you're gonna be able to achieve your goal for all of your hand cards is a fun feeling condensed into a small time window, because I think the game plays. We play it mostly at 2-player, but the game plays in about maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. If you have really slow players, so it packs a punch in that small window. The second thing I want to talk about is one of the other expansions that comes in the Deluxe edition is this cursed card deck. And so what that changes in the game is that at the start of the game, everyone's going to be dealt a curse card face up in front of them. And this gives them a special power on their turn that they can choose to use or not. And so each curse card, most of them, will come with a negative bonus point associated to it. And so with it face up for you, you never have to use any of the curse cards and never have to suffer the negative bonus for scoring at the end of the game. But if there is a moment where you feel like the card would be very effective for you to use, it breaks the turn structure of pick a card, play a card. They allow you to do different things, so they're very helpful if you're looking specifically for like the angel card. You really need the angel card to compete this massive combo. We have maybe a card here, like where we're running out of time, you could use the shovel to discard a card from the discard area and put it at the bottom of the deck just to keep that timer of the game going. And so I think that these cards add a unique, like broken element, or not broken, but like they break the simple turn structure to make there be a little more depth in your decision. Because on your turn, curse cards now have the following options that you can do, where you can either do nothing. There's always the option to just ignore curse cards and play it the normal game structure variant, which is I really like in games where you don't, when they include expansions that you aren't forced to have to play that strategy when playing with the expansion. So there's always the option to do nothing, but you can also choose to, if you ended up with a shovel and say that's not really something that you're looking for, you can discard it for another curse card. So you can kind of cycle of like, oh, maybe I need the sarcophagus, which is take the top card from the deck and place it directly under in the discard area, then end your turn. So you're like, I have the perfect hand, and I just want to speed up the end game. And your shovel's not really doing anything because that's prolonging it. You could discard the shovel to get the sarcophagus, and then uh, speed up the game. And the sarcophagus actually has a positive point value to it, so maybe that's the perfect relic to use to sneak out and end the game early and stick all your opponents with the not the most optimized end game hands. And so I think that having because when you play a curse card, you'll always end up with one card. They'll have it face down to show that it is your curse card that you've used for the game. But then you have, like, say you did that earlier and we didn't end the game, you would always draw another curse card to always have a free action or additional action that changes the core structure to uh, at your disposal. So I think those cursed relics add this nice little flair that Michaela, my fiance, and I have played Fantasy Realms at least a dozen times at this point. So the core structure, we actually ended up offloading it a while back because we were just introduced to Red Rising, which we'll talk about another day, and we really liked the hand management that it was doing there. On top of the art for Red Rising is beautiful, and we really loved the theme of it. So we actually got rid of base Fantasy Realms a while back just because the game had sort of played out itself, and we spent time thinking about like building the hands, figuring out what was the potential like max hand strategy to go with, and like the game kind of felt like we weren't seeing anything new. But we actually just got this deluxe edition recently because we were in trade. And those relic cards really, or not relic, but those cursed item cards really kind of piqued my interest, and the fact that they updated the art. So I think the art is very beautiful, and they added 3 new suits that we hadn't played with. Really gave a breath of fresh air. Breathed. What's the saying? It breathed new life into the game. So Fantasy Realms Deluxe Edition is our game of the breakfast. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you've played Fantasy Realms Deluxe Edition before, or even just base Fantasy Realms, I'd love to hear what your favorite parts are in the comments below. I think I have to start doing those sign-offs so it can make editing these videos better. So we'll do that on the next 2. Gotta always say subscribe, subscribe, subscribe if you like the content. But the next portion of today's breakfast is that we will now take the game of the day, Fantasy Realms, and we will use our Wheel of Mechanics to add a random game mechanic into Fantasy Realms, the game of the breakfast. So what we'll do here is I've pulled up a random wheel generator, and I've added in probably, it says right here, there are 63 different game mechanics that I've pulled from BGG. I kind of synthesized and removed ones that aren't either mechanics that are too close to one another, or ones that I'm not fully aware of, or they're one-off mechanics that would be very hard to design around. But we got 63 game mechanics that we're going to click the wheel to spin it, and it's going to give us a random mechanic that we have to add into Fantasy Realms Deluxe Edition. Ooh, ladder climbing. That actually feels like it's not going to be too polar opposite of the game, so we might be able to get that in. Gotta learn how to spell on a Friday. So we are trying to get better handwriting for legibility. But we got ladder climbing, and we are trying to get that into Fantasy Realms Deluxe. So that is our goal for that. Oop. What did I just hear? Pineapple. That was strange. Oh, it was an advertisement that scared me. Sorry about that. Alright, we'll take it from the top. So, what we are doing now is we are talking about Fantasy Realms. And our goal is to take Fantasy Realms and ladder climbing and smash them together. And for those of you who are new to the breakfast, we are going to set ourselves 5 minutes on our timer and see where we get with this brainstorm session. So I'm going to start the clock, and our goal is to do Fantasy Realms and ladder climbing. So for those of you who are not familiar, did the audio of that actually come through for the ad? Because I don't know if it was just in my earbuds that it scared me, but it definitely, I think it's a pineapple. But all right, so ladder climbing is a game. It's also known as a shedding game. So ones that I'm familiar with is Scout by I think Oink Games just reproduced it or published in the States at least. Scout is a ladder climbing game, also known as a shedding game, where you have to play cards to the table, and you have to beat what was previously laid. As sort of, we play President a lot as a family, and so I don't know if you've ever played President with a standard 52 deck of cards, but that would be another example of a shedding game. And so we have to turn, or ladder climbing game, we have to turn Fantasy Realms into a ladder climbing game. And I am only rambling because I'm kind of stumped on how to do this. So we got 11 suits. Maybe. Did I lie about that? I'll count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15. 15, 15, 15. Alright, so we got 15 suits, and I've been able to preamble and ramble enough where I think I know where I'm going with this. So it would be how do we do this? We would potentially shuffle and deal out 10 cards to every player. And no, because you have to. How do you have everyone win 7 suits? Ooh, that would be an interesting mechanic. All right, so stick with me. So everyone's dealt 7 cards, or maybe 10 cards to give a little flexibility. But everyone's dealt 10 cards at the start of the game or the round. And so we have 10 cards in our hand, and 1 card will be flipped on the top of the deck, which would be Trump, or the Trump suit for the game. For those of you who are unfamiliar with, I guess this is a trick taking. All right, well, let's just pretend I'm on a roll, so we'll keep with this idea because we are already 3 minutes into the timer, but we are pivoting to trick taking because I want to flesh out this idea. But we are adding trick taking to fantasy realms. So everyone's dealt 10 cards at the start. And then a Trump suit will be revealed on the top of the deck. And so the player to the left of the dealer will start, and they will play 1 card of their 10 from their hand to lead the trick. And what would then happen is players have to follow that suit if they are able to, or play offsuit if they don't have the right suit. Trick taking sounds better. Ladder climbing would be hard, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree, Michaela. Michaela, my fiance, has jumped into chat to give some of her opinions to our challenge. But everyone's dealt 10 cards at the start. I'm going to keep repeating that, but everyone's dealt 10, and then you will follow, do standard trick taking rules where you have to play on suit if you can, and once there are 7 tricks that have been played, everyone will be left with 3 cards in their hand. And so these are the 3 cards that you're guaranteed to be able to pick from when creating your hand of 7 at the end of the game. And what'll happen is everyone that has won a trick will then, so say we're playing with 4 players, each trick that you've won, you'll get the first option to select which card from that trick you want to win, and then you'll pass the remaining 3 and do a draft style. So after you've done the trick taking and you draft from the tricks that you've won, everyone will end up back with 10 cards in their hand. And to complete the round, you'll choose 7 of those 10 to do for your final scoring. And so that is perfect timing because we got 10 seconds left, so I'm going to stop it there. And I will give a, as eloquent as I can, summary of what we just ideated. But we've taken fantasy realms, and we've added trick taking to it. I'm going to jump back to the full camera. But we took fantasy realms, and we added in trick taking because we pivoted away from ladder climbing because it's I'm the only one at the breakfast table right now, so I can't be stopped. But how we would add trick taking into fantasy realms is at the start of each round, everyone would be dealt 10 cards, and then the Trump suit would be revealed. And so with that 10 card hand, you would then do normal trick taking mechanics of the player to the left of the dealer would start, and they would lead a trick or play a card. You would have to follow suit if you have that card suit, which there are 15 suits in the game, so we're playing with the colors being the suits. And once 7 tricks have been played and are face up in front of everyone, everyone will be left with 3 cards in their hand. And so you'll put those down in front of you, and then you will draft from the tricks that everyone has won. So say I won 3 tricks, I would have 3 piles of 4, because we're playing a 4-player game. I would then get to select which card from my suit or trick that I won I would like. So say I want the wizard, I'd put that in my pile and pass that trick to the player to my left. And I would then pick up the second trick I won, do the same thing. Oh, I want another wizard. So then pass to the left, and say the person to my left won a trick, they would then give me 3, and we would draft till everyone has 10 cards left back into their hand. And that's when you do the final hand comboing for scoring. And so we would look at our hand of 10, and be like, ooh, I don't want the Elven Archers. I don't have any weather cards, so that's not going to get me any points. And ooh, there's a penalty for this brigable, war brigable. I don't have any. I also still don't have any weather, so I got to get rid of that one. And we would end with our 7 cards, and that's when you would do the scoring. And so that is how we would take Fantasy Realms Deluxe Edition and add a trick-taking element to it. And so how I would test this is that the next time we had a couple friends over and they were in the mood to play some sort of card style game, not really a party game, but in the mood to play something like Fantasy Realms, I would get consent ahead of time, but I would say, hey, I got this cool trick-taking variant that I've house ruled. Would anyone like to partake in it? And if the group agrees, I would then either play them this video, or I'd probably tell them in real time, hey, this is how the game plays. I would probably make notes, write down the quick order operations, deal 10, 9 tricks, draft, score as the flow, just to remind everyone and give you. I'd probably make little player reference cards on top of photographing the back of the rulebook, which gives all of the names of the cards there for players who haven't played Fantasy Realms to look at and reference. But that is how I would take the idea of adding trick-taking to Fantasy Realms and test it out for viability. So that is our second part of today's breakfast. And now let me just pull up the last section. We are good there. Let me switch over here. Bam. Oh, we gotta add a new screen. Alright, so the last portion of today's live stream is where we are designing a game from scratch, or brainstorming a new concept based off of a prompt given to us by letsmakeagame.net. And so once we click this generate button, it will give us a genre, a rule, a setting, and a theme as our prompt to design a board game concept on. So without further ado, I'm going to click generate, and our genre is a sandbox. The rule is inconvenient superpowers. The setting is science fiction, and the theme is natural disaster. That is a spicy meatball. All right, so we will reset the timer, and we got 5 minutes to see where this takes us. So sandbox setting is basically an open world where you can do anything. Science fiction and natural disaster. Inconvenient superpowers. Alright, so I would probably jump off of the only sandbox game that we have, I believe, is Western Legends. But sandbox games are basically you can do anything you can think of. It's like an open world exploration style game that, like video games similar to Breath of the Wild, is kind of like a sandbox style exploration. I believe the general term is that it's just the world is open for exploring. And so potentially this is a map that's set up into some sort of grid. I would start with maybe 9 just for simplicity. The tiles are randomly seeded that maybe have pathways, and so like this is the city board. So this is the main board. That then all of these event tokens are seeded out on the board as well. And we are superheroes that have been kind of transported from an alternate universe into this setting where a natural disaster has just occurred. And so maybe these are the little squiggles are ruins or destroyed buildings, and then these are citizens that need rescuing. And you would have the citizens are unknown, but they're all assigned a color type. And so we got the blue citizens, the red, and the yellow. And everyone's got their superpower player board that has different, like at the start of the game, you're dealt your superhero card, or your superpower card, I guess is, because we're not necessarily heroes yet because we haven't saved anyone. But you got your superpower card here that you're dealt, and so maybe that would be a special power that you have. So special power, but like a revealing, like when you first engage and run into one of these citizens to try and rescue them, and you reveal there is a negative interaction that happens where you your the superpower goes off and it's inconvenient. So I'm sort of trying to design around that inconvenient tag, but you have your potential like tracks or something here that manage your stats, and then maybe you have the ability to hold 2 item cards. And so this can be the item deck. And so we now have the setup done where we have created the board, which creates the map, and then there's probably footprints to get around from citizen to citizen. For those of you who have played Clank Catacombs, maybe something similar to like the board tiles like that, but instead of items, they're not necessarily guaranteed to be items, but there's 4 types of tokens. There's item tokens, there's blue citizens, there's red citizens, and yellow citizens. And you have a certain requirement for how to save each citizen. And when you reveal them, there's an interaction that your superpower goes off, and like maybe they end up moving, or I don't know. I'm not going to use the 5 minutes to brainstorm all of the powers, and then I just looked at the clock and we only got 10 seconds left anyway. But we will kind of dilly-dally for a few seconds and make our hideous drawing look a little more hideous. But timer is up. So I will recap where we got to with this game, and then I will clean up the today's episode by kind of sharing what my next steps would be and how I would go about taking this quick 5-minute concept to get it to a point where I could play test in front of potentially someone other than Michaela, because Michaela, my fiance, is very good about testing any wacky concepts that I have and get to paper. She's usually the first person that does the trial runs with them, so I appreciate her for that. But without further ado, we are recapping our sandbox, inconvenient superpowers, science fiction natural disaster game. And so the theme of it is that we are these weird freaks with inconvenient superpowers that we're trying to become superheroes. And we have come across this city that has been ransacked by a massive earthquake. Will be this side. Potentially there's the flood side on the other side of the tiles. That would give different rule structures and things like that. And so each tile has spaces to move around on. They have barriers that create the pathing of how you can get to different areas, and it has the citizens that you are trying to save. So depending on the player count, you would draw, so maybe a 6-player or a 2-player game would be 6 tiles, 3-player game would be 9 tiles, and 4-player game would be 12 tiles. And what you would do is once the board is seated, you would draw cards for scoring conditions, maybe, that each citizen scores about at the end of the game, and you also have the item deck, which are additional scoring actions, but there are also potentially abilities tied into them. I'm a big fan of multi-use cards, or like cards with multiple effect, not multiple choice, but like cards that serve multiple purposes. So potentially the item similar to your superpower. Your superpower has a special unique ability that allows you to interact with the game state in a broken way, but it also has a reveal power associated to it. But I'm kind of rambling, so I will try and clean it up as succinctly as possible. But we have a randomly seeded board, and the goal of the game, or the end game, is triggered when all the citizens have been saved. And at the end of the game, you will tally up your scoring for the citizens, as well as any scoring that you had with your item cards. And the player with the most points wins. But while you're on your turn, you have potentially so we would the things we'd still have to determine is what a turn looks like. We'd have to come up with the maybe we'd have to come up with at least one scoring criteria for each type of citizen. So we need 3 citizen scoring. We would need to create maybe 10 item scoring, and then we would have to create at least 6 tiles for the board to randomly generate that. I would probably just pull out our copy of Clank Catacombs, or find a copy like that, or potentially use some sort of tile laying system. We got Northgard, I think I could use. What else? What else? What else? I believe we sold our copy of Clank Catacombs. But we could use the regular Clank board as sort of a parts and pieces to replicate the board for now. And so we probably wouldn't need that, but we would need to figure out what a turn sequence looks like. My initial instinct is move and interact is the simple way to do that. And have to figure out if we actually have I'd probably scrap that idea for now. And we would start with you can hold 2 item cards at any given time, which are unique scoring abilities, and the superpower cards. We would come up with what happens when a certain color is revealed and what the special power is. So we'd come up with at least 4 of those, and then I would probably play it on TTS. I might find I guess that's probably what I would do. I would jump into TTS and see if there's a workshop for Clank Catacombs, and then borrow those parts for a workshop to test that to get the board. And then in Illustrator, I would create the 3 base scoring criteria and come up with the 10 item cards. I would create tokens that are colorful on one side and probably blank on the other. And so the items here can be green for now. And I would create the simple rule structure, and I would, we are in interrogation mode. And I would go from there. So I would create the player board of pretty simple. The player board would look like a 3 card slot. We'd call this one the items, and we'd call that one the superpower. And so that is where we got to today. It looks like a finger painting drawing looking up at the screen to see how it looks, but that is our designing a game in 5 minutes section of today. If you liked the game or have comments or thoughts below of how we could add to make this a fully functioned game, feel free to leave those in the comments below. If you like the content that we're putting out, please subscribe. I'd love to get feedback to know what you guys are enjoying or what you'd like to see more of. I hope everyone has a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.